Hello everyone, and welcome back to part 2 of our Tyrannosaurus Paleo myths. In the last episode, we tackled 5 famous tropes and ideas regarding the most famous dinosaur. Most flopped pretty hard when confronted with the latest evidence. But because there are so many myths floating around about T-Rex, today comes 5 more to evaluate. No need to prolong the intro, let's dig this up. In almost all paleo media that includes the tyrant lizard king, it's given a sick roar to cement its presence and show dominance over the other losers. Of course, no recording crew has been able to return to the late Cretaceous to sample their true sounds, so audio effects artists splice and alter the noises of several different modern animals to reach something that sounds appropriate for these titans. At this point, audiences are so accustomed to the use of modern roars and bellows that we forget to ask, did Tyrannosaurus actually roar? Along with other dinosaurs, of course. This has been a topic of discussion in the paleo community though, so let's sift through the evidence. Many of the thunderous roars we hear are crafted by using modern animals like lions, baby elephants, and an unapologetic use of straight up bear growls in Valley of the T-Rex.
You're joking, right? He's not joking.
When we think of a big roar, well, it's these mammals that come to mind. Other groups of animals sing their own beautiful tunes. They aren't mute, but don't give us everything we need for a big movie star appearance. If we want to know what sounds Tyrannosaurus made, well, that's rough, buddy, because we don't have any T-Rex or non-avian theropod vocal organs fossilized. Birds, as we established in the last video, are the Rex's closest living relatives, so perhaps their extinct cousins made similar songs.
Really?
No!
Even though they're both Coelurosaurian theropod dinosaurs, the aves hold a secret not found in any other dinosaur group, a syrinx, this vocal organ at the base of the trachea that allows them to produce their fantastical songs. Another place we can look is in the crocodilians, which, like mammals, have a larynx, though not as complex. By rushing air and vibrating folds in their larynx, alligators and crocodiles can still make a range of vocalizations such as bellows, rumbles, hisses, and laser blasts for the babies. Still not quite the dramatic roars from the big screen. Both birds and crocodilians, the modern-day archosaurs, and dinosaurs in the case of birds, have the ability for closed-mouth vocalizations, pushing air through a pouch in their trachea to produce low rumbles. This is phylogenetic bracketing. Because we know such a trait exists in its relatives on both sides of the archosaur family tree, it's likely that those in between, the non-avian dinosaurs, had this trait as well. Booms, hisses, and rumbles may have been possible rather than a loud tiger roar or elephant trumpet. The topic of dinosaur sounds only grew stranger with the discovery of a larynx in the ankylosaur Pinacosaurus from Mongolia, so not very related to the tyrannosaurids at all, though it's possible other dinosaur groups had similar structures that didn't preserve. When the news first dropped in 2023, the immediate discourse seemed full of excitement over what potential sounds this ankylosaurid made. But it has been noted how the voice box is structured more like a bird larynx, which does not use the organ to produce noises. Again, that's what their syrinx is for. Two main scenarios emerge from this. Either the non-birds use their larynx and a syrinx that has not been preserved and found yet in order to make a whole menagerie of vocalizations, or they were in an awkward middle zone where neither a larynx or a non-existent syrinx could make noise. The sad second possibility doesn't mean they were mute. There were still sounds they could make without a voice box, but would be less fun in my opinion. The world of dinosaur mumblings is a confusing one due to a lack of hard evidence, but as far as roaring goes, It might depend on your definition of a roar, and if you count some deep croc rumbles. So pretty generously, we're back with Willem Dafoe taking this whole line back to formula.
Back to formula.
It seems like every couple of documentary reviews I return to this topic. My opinion on the subject hasn't changed, but let's talk about it for the sake of completion. This is something the public is curious to know and have questions about. Was Tyrannosaurus feathered? Since the mid-2010s, it's been commonplace to stick fuzz on just about everything as evidence for feathers grew more widespread throughout Dinosauria and even related archosaurs like pterosaurs who have structures that may be homologous to dino feathers, branching from a common ancestor. Tyrannosaurus, being a Coelurosaurian theropod, is right within range to get fluffed up. The question in itself poses a problem though. Being feathered can have a whole host of meanings. Are we talking modern birds and other paravians who sported pennaceous body and wing feathers? Are we getting a downy coat of varying thickness? Or how about some ornamental quills as seen in Psittacosaurus? Well, it's difficult to say for certain without much evidence. Skin impressions are pretty rare finds, although I'm sure some of you at home can list off several significant examples. In the grand scheme of the fossil record, we possess a proportionally small amount. For the many decent Rex specimens known and available to science, only the specimen named Y. rex provides any insight into their integument, and it shows scales. No trace of feathers, just relatively small, pebbly scales of various shapes. Looking at the skin of this 12-meter behemoth would give a leathery impression due to how minuscule each individual scale was. This is the current look commonly presented in paleo art. Unfortunately, we can't close the case here. Only small segments of skin impressions were present on Y. rex, specifically on the neck, tail, and pelvic region. Maybe some fluff was present along the back or the head. To fill in the missing gaps, let's look at the relatives of T-Rex. Two finds that spurred the T-Rex debate were D. long in 2004 and U. tyrannus in 2012, hence that mid-2000s surge in fuzzy rexes. Returning to phylogeny, these early Cretaceous animals belong to the superfamily Tyrannosauroidea, making them not the closest relatives, though firmly on the path there. Think of them as great-great-uncles. D. long wasn't much of a surprise. With a small body size, it would have needed those simple downy feathers to retain body heat in the temperate, occasionally chilly climate of the Yixian Formation in early Cretaceous China. U. tyrannus, from the same formation, was a much larger 9-meter, 1.4-ton predator that still maintained its feathers. So even a larger theropod can still have a downy coat. And for the record, they both show fuzz along their tails. Well, since some distant relatives Rex never heard of had feathers, can we make an assumption that they had some too? Before we reach a verdict, let's move further up the family tree to the Tyrannosauridae, the actual family containing the close relatives of Tyrannosaurus. And let's see the Tyrannosaurinae, the subfamily of the super close cousins. Gorgosaurus and Albertosaurus, the two Albertosaurine tyrannosaurids, both show scales. Albertosaurus itself is one of the only theropods to possess big feature scales found around the belly ribs or gastralia. Daspletosaurus, along with Tarbosaurus, two very close tyrannosaurines, also only preserve scales. Though present in early Cretaceous tyrannosauroids, all traces of feathers disappeared in more derived late Cretaceous tyrannosaurids, possibly due to the growing sizes of its family members. Insulating dino fuzz is very useful for small-bodied critters who struggle with retaining body heat, but these can cause serious problems in giant predators who desperately need to shed excess heat when they're active. The Hell Creek Formation, along with other North American Maastrichtian formations where Tyrannosaurus is found, are often described as a lush, wet, semi-tropical climate similar to what we see in the Gulf states. As a 9-ton endothermic hunter in such an environment, a feathery coat may be a death sentence. So, no large chicken tyrants. This does not mean, however, that no feathers were present at all. Flashy display feathers and maybe some quills are still on the table. Some paleontologists think small juveniles would have had a downy covering that shed as they aged. No direct evidence is available to support that, but it's another possibility. So to sum up, was Tyrannosaurus covered in feathers like a bird? No, definitely not.
That idea is just the worst.
Did they have any coverings at all? Perhaps. Now, throughout paleo media, whether it be in novels, films, documentaries, you name it, we're often shown Tyrannosaurus acting as caring, nurturing parents, though when provoked, they become the most dangerous, destructive punishment nature can enact. Once upon a time, these creatures were portrayed as overly violent, vicious lizards without a care in the world. Since the dinosaur renaissance of the late 20th century, there's been a sharp shift in the opposite direction. While the look and the posture of dinosaurs were changing, so were their depicted behaviors. So far, paleontologists haven't found any direct evidence of parental behavior in Tyrannosaurus itself, but the whole notion of the terrible lizards as nurturing kicked off in 1978 when a younger, not yet infamous Dr. Jack Horner uncovered a nesting ground full of adult and baby Maiasaura along with eggshells, leading to the idea that the good mother lizards cared for their eggs and then their young upon hatching. Both adults and hatchlings stayed around the herd's nests. Maiasaura, though, are ornithischians on the other side of the dinosaur family tree. Did anything closer to T-Rex raise its young? Meet City Patty. As an oviraptorid, it too was a Coelurosaur theropod like the king. A famous specimen nicknamed Big Mama sees a parent City Patty sitting on their egg clutch, incubating and defending it. I took this picture myself since you can find it at the AMNH in New York. Actually, 2 such specimens were found, with another find called Big Auntie. So, you gotta do the obligatory meme. If I had a nickel for each time scientists found a City Patty sitting on its nest,
I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right?
More evidence comes when we return to phylogenetic bracketing. Birds are the living dinosaurs, and they're good parents too. The only other living archosaur lineage is the crocodilians, who, wouldn't you know it, guard their young. If all living archosaurs and dinosaurs specifically engage in child rearing, we can take this as the archosaur and dinosaur default setting, so unless evidence points to T-Rex not raising their kids, we can assume that they do. To be fair, some sauropods likely abandon their eggs, laying a buttload, then hoping 1 or 2 survive into adulthood. So this isn't true of all dinosaurs. To close this out, while we don't have direct evidence in Tyrannosaurus itself, yeah, we can assume that most dinos, them included, were good parents and probably raised hell when their young were threatened. For how long? Who knows? Were both parents involved, or did the fathers leave to get the milk? Who knows? But we can say this myth is
most likely.
Tyrannosaurus rex, since its discovery, has been notable for being among the largest theropods and carnivores in general to walk the earth. So far, larger specimens are the current title holders as largest land carnivores ever in terms of mass. Such enormous sizes of 9 tons or more, along with a fearsome reputation, have given it kaiju treatment, where us audiences continuously watch it fight other things. Across paleo media, we've seen T-Rex encounter a wide range of creatures, either herbivores on the defensive or rival giant carnivores. Let's first cycle through all the scenarios that didn't happen and then come back around to see what did. 2 I can get out of the way quickly are Stegosaurus and Apatosaurus. Brontosaurus also, if that is a valid genus. That discussion is outside the scope of this video, so for now I'll just lump the 2. Whatever. Sure, it may be fun for filmmakers to show such iconic dinosaurs duking it out, but those 2 or 3 plant eaters roamed the western United States during the late Jurassic around 150 million years ago. Tyrannosaurus definitely had overlapping territory, even if they also lived more northward in Canada as well. But the problem is, these creatures are at least 77 million years apart. T-Rex didn't show up until 68 million years ago. But if the spike tail wanted to take on Microensis instead, then they're 76 million years apart. Much better. Stegosaurus and Apatosaurus never took on the king. In fact, T-Rex was closer to a confrontation with Pete Postlethwaite than these Jurassic giants.
You have been cheated and lied to!
I knew it!
As the king, there's always someone looking to take the throne. Enter Spinosaurus, another truly gigantic theropod from late Cretaceous North Africa, discovered by German scientist Ernst Stromer and described in 1915. This incredible and wacky specimen was tragically lost to science, being destroyed in an Allied bombing of Munich during World War II, so it didn't command much presence in the public until later finds of more complete relatives and new material decades later. Once the river hunter returned, well, of course it must be pitted against T-Rex to see who is the true, coolest, biggest, baddest predator. Yeah, so this never happened either. No Rex or Spino ever met, let alone battled. Both theropods lived during the late Cretaceous epoch, though at vastly different times. Our fish-eating friend roamed at the start of this time from between 100 and 94 million years ago during the Cenomanian stage, sometimes referred to as the unofficial Middle Cretaceous. This is a far cry from the Upper Maastrichtian when we find T-Rex. The Spinosaurid family died off before the Tyrannosaurids ever even took off. Another hole in this scenario is how the two lived on different continents. Spinosaurus aegypticus material comes from North Africa, and maybe South America if you want to lump Australasia in the same species. The Tyrant, on the other hand, is North American. So as cool as it would be to see these two titans clash, it never happened. Can we speculate who would come out on top? Sure, but all it will be is speculation unless someone actually resurrects the two, then forces them to fight, which would be an animal rights catastrophe. Next comes my favorite ornithischian, Styracosaurus, being such a gnarly and intimidating ceratopsid. One famous confrontation between it and Tyrannosaurus can be seen in the 1969 film The Valley of Gwangi, which I've never watched outside of this one clip. Although this is some anachronistic Western fantasy, it should be noted that, yeah, we're getting closer. Styracosaurus certainly lived at the right place in Alberta, Canada, and also comes from the late Cretaceous, but still a bit too early, living 75 million years ago, 7 million years before T-Rex. Rather, it came into contact with other related Tyrannosaurids, Gorgosaurus and Daspletosaurus. If we want to talk about prehistoric battles that did happen, well, we'd have to look at which creatures cohabitated with T-Rex in western North America at the end of the Cretaceous. Often we see the iconic T-Rex versus Triceratops. Don't worry, science isn't taking this one away from you. These two creatures lived at the same time in the same place. So we know they lived together, but do we have evidence of combat? Interestingly enough, it is quite common for scientists to find bites and dragging tooth marks on the horned dinosaur's frills, leading to the argument that the carnivore would rip their pointy, bony heads off in order to reach the delicious neck meat. Now we have grotesque paleo art depicting such an occurrence.
Look, I'm just gonna put it on top of Bluey's for now. Oh! Hi, Bluey!
But wait a minute, bite marks only prove that T-Rex ate shrikes, yet we don't know if the two ever fought. Maybe the herbivore was already dead when those teeth came around. If this could be the case, then how would we know if the two ever fought? One obvious signal is if the Triceratops' bones healed. That would mean it was alive during the encounter, then lived to die at some other time. Man, it would be awesome to find such evidence, which is exactly what happened in 1997, according to John W. Happ of Shenandoah University. One skull from the Defender was found with tooth marks around the frill, and even the tip of its left brown horn was bitten off. Since these wounds show signs of infection and healing, we know the Triceratops was alive during the episode and survived. Here we have definitive proof of an epic encounter between the most famous predatory dino and the most famous herbivorous dino. We can't say what happened to the Rex. Did it die or give up? Nobody can know, but we know it put up one heck of a fight, damaging its opponent's horn in the process. Although this myth already looks great, an even crazier find is the Montana dueling dinosaurs, which, after a long legal battle, is now on display at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences, where studies are still underway. The dueling dinosaurs resembles the popular fighting dinosaurs from Mongolia, though the combatants here are a Triceratops and a juvenile T-Rex. Probably.
Leave me alone!
Experts can't say with 100% certainty that these unlucky individuals were also locked in combat, but injuries on both bodies, including a tooth embedded in the plant eater, makes this scenario very likely. In the end, both lost as they were rapidly buried in sediment. Now, we have definitive evidence of a fight and a very likely encounter, so this myth of T-Rex v Triceratops gets a
Perfection.
Though, to be fair, you wouldn't expect a Rex to target healthy adult Triceratops just for the sake of selling tickets to an awesome battle. Nah, a young or sickly individual would be more appealing due to less risk of, being impaled.
Approved! 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 Approved!
This brings us to yet another Tyrannosaurus myth, so we're getting a 2-for-1 deal. Returning viewers and paleo fans probably remember the famous, though controversial paleontologist Jack Horner, who stirred up the paleo community when he hypothesized that what is one of the most revered predators in the fossil record was actually an obligate scavenger, not being able to hunt prey.
The best thing that we can say based on the evidence is that T-Rex was 100% scavenger.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
We've analyzed some of Horner's hypotheses in previous paleo myths and had some laughs along the way, but his scavenger idea is probably the most, despised. No formal paper was ever published on the subject, though he pushed the concept in the late 90s, early 2000s, which became the subject of the documentaries Valley of the T-Rex, which I reviewed, and T-Rex Warrior or Wimp. So basically, Horner's main points for why he believed this were that 1. T-Rex possessed puny vestigial arms that were no good for capturing prey. As we discussed in the last video, there were potentially several uses for these shrunken limbs, so although I was on the fence, I had to invoke the Green Goblin for the useless arms myth. Point number 2 centered around Tyrannosaurus' speed. It's true these were no Cretaceous cheetahs, but they didn't need to be faster than food they'll never encounter, or aren't necessarily within their niche. Some of the larger herbivores such as Edmontosaurus could probably get in a good trot, but weren't speed demons either. By targeting vulnerable individuals like the young, sick, or injured, and by utilizing ambush techniques, T-Rex still could have cancelled their subscriptions to living. Number 3 examines the animal's senses, stating that they had a superb sense of smell, yet bad eyesight, so really, they were just good for tracking carcasses over miles. Vultures can do this because they fly, soaring for hours while barely flapping their wings. It cost them very little to travel in search of carrion. That 9-ton Rex would have had to lug all that weight for miles, or pray a large animal just so happened to die in its immediate vicinity every few days.
His immense body is beginning to fail him.
Are you telling me that a man just happens to fall like that? No, he orchestrated it. Jimmy!
That nose was probably good for tracking prey as well, not just tracking carcasses. As for the Vision 2, this is the worst theropod to make that argument with, as we saw last time, empowered with some of the best eyesight ever to grace the animal kingdom. And lastly, for point 4, Horner claimed that there was no evidence of Tyrannosaurus ever attacking anything, only bites and scrapes on already dead carcasses. We just saw them fight against Triceratops. This is dead wrong. We've already seen a few dead giveaways.
Dead giveaway. Dead giveaway.
These guys weren't attacking trikes for fun or to win some victory royale. Obviously they attacked to feed themselves, like a predator. A similar example comes from the very close relative of Triceratops, Torosaurus, which lived at the same time and place. This larger cousin too had to deal with T-Rex and has the wounds to prove it. One specimen nicknamed Nicole displays wreck-sized bite marks on its frill that started to heal before the plant eater died sometime after its encounter. The Torosaurus was fully alive when attacked and successfully fought back. Also, in the growing list of evidence against Horner's hypothesis, we have it in Montosaurus' tail with a tooth embedded in it. Is this a Giganotosaurus or Spinosaurus tooth? Of course not. Such weaponry belonged to the one and only Tyrannosaurus. Each of the dude's points fall flat, especially when there's so much clear, direct fossil evidence in the other direction. We know for a fact that these dinos were active predators that fed or attempted to feed on the large herbivores in their environment. Sure, they'd be crazy to pass up a free meal if the opportunity presented itself. It beats dealing with horns and clubtails swinging at you. However, T-Rex did not solely rely on scavenging and was fully capable of killing things. Being such a chunk, it needed a lot of meat, so it couldn't afford to be picky. Meat is meat, whether it's from a fresh carcass or still on a moving duckbill. If you want to hear more on the subject, check out my Valley of the T-Rex review from a couple of years ago. Tyrannosaurus being an obligate scavenger precedes the obvious grade of
That idea is just the worst.
That's 10 myths about Tyrannosaurus Rex complete. Some good and a lot of bad or unsupported. As one of the most recognized and studied prehistoric animals with loads of pop culture depictions, of course ideas come and go. We throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. Yeah, it's unfortunate that much of the information out there is wrong, but on the bright side, it gives us an opportunity to discuss the life and appearance and behavior of one of the coolest creatures to walk the earth. If you want a part 3, let me know in the comments below. Feel free to recommend more Rex myths you've heard about. But next up, was Nanotyrannus a juvenile T-Rex? Until then, please remember to leave a like, subscribe, and to check out my social media. See you next time.